But let's start with the NFL awards last night. And we'll get to all the ones in full. But of course, the most important one is the MVP. And this was a lot closer than I thought. Matthew Stafford wins his first ever MVP at age 37. Mic drop moment, brings his 4 beautiful little girls up there with him and says, I'm coming back in 2026. How could you not? That was adorable. That was sweet. But when we found out the voting, Brad, that's what pissed me off. That's where I want to start as it pertains to Matt Stafford just edging out Drake May to win the MVP. So Stafford and Drake May only ended up accounting for 47 of the 50 first place votes. So that means, 3 voters didn't put Drake May or Matt Stafford on the top of their ballot. And those 3 votes essentially decided the MVP race. I'm glad Matthew Stafford won. I think he deserved to win. Drake May had a hell of a season, but Stafford's numbers were better. Yeah, the Patriots as a whole were a slightly better team, better record than the Rams. They won their division. The Rams didn't. But what Matthew Stafford did this year was nothing shy of incredible. And you got 3 morons that voted. 2 of them voted for Josh Allen as a first place vote. And one of them, Sam Monson, sure he's a nice guy, votes for Justin Herbert. And look, again, I think it's okay because Stafford ended up winning and he should have won. But man, those 3 votes could have easily flipped the MVP voting a different way. And what it does is it doesn't give us a clear picture of how it really should have gone, because Josh Allen and Justin Herbert had no business getting first place votes. And so if one of those voters voted for Drake May, he would have at worst tied with Matthew Stafford. If 2 of them voted for Drake May, he would have won the MVP. And so both of those guys should have got all the first place votes. The exact points of how it finishes, Stafford finished with 366 voting points. Drake May finished with 361 voting points. And Stafford had 24 first place votes. Drake May had 23. How in your right mind, after what we've seen over the last 2 weeks with the Pro Football Hall of Fame making a mess out of things, with Belichick not getting in on the first ballot, Shedeur Sanders being named a Pro Bowler, we can't even get the MVP voting right because you have 3 people out there with their attention-grabbing votes of, well, if you look at it this way, this guy actually was the most valuable because of these injuries. Enough. We have found a way to screw up the MVP voting as well. Stafford won it. I'm glad he won it. He deserved to win it. But, I mean, my God, can we do anything right as a sports society anymore, Brad?
Look, I think it's a warranted question. And, a lot of these voters, they did get it right. But the 3 that you mentioned, and Sam, had a very passionate display as to why, listing all the reasons on video. Look, man, if you have to, take to social media, have to churn out a video that is a long explanation as to why you voted for Justin Herbert, that is the reason why you shouldn't have voted for Justin Herbert, with all the various explanations there. I know he tried to do the most that he could there in SoCal behind a broken offensive line, but a lot of his numbers regressed. He saw a surge in one area in particular, and that was on the ground, running for his damn life on a number of occasions because he had a rickety offensive line. But bar none, this was always a 2-horse race. And really, those 2 guys had separated themselves about midseason down the home stretch. And, of course, that was Stafford and Drake May. And they understandably and warrantedly got the majority of the overall votes. I think Stafford, deserved it as well. The 46 touchdown passes, over 4,700 yards. He was masterful. You look at some of the accuracy rankings, he struggled in some areas, like his adjusted completion percentage, believe it or not, was outside the top 15 this season. Drake Mays was inside the top 10, but you're really splitting hairs between the 2 guys. I think both certainly were deserving of MVP votes. Both, no matter who would have hoisted the hardware in the end, I would have supported it regardless. But Josh Allen got a couple of votes. Get the hell out of here with that. And Justin Herbert's one is utterly dumbfounding. Sometimes these voters, Pat, just get too cute. And, they're there in their dark room, fidgeting with a Rubik's Cube. Oh, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to figure it out. and they never ultimately do. I just don't understand why they had to go down that route. It was clear, it was very black and white, clear as day, that Matthew Stafford and Drake May, and whatever where you wanted them, whether it was Stafford ahead of May or vice versa, they were the two guys, the only two guys worthy of an MVP vote. But again, here in our football gods of 2026, hot take artists still exist.
Yeah, phone number to join the show is 310-840-4910. That's 310-840-4910. How do you feel knowing that three voters basically determined the MVP voting and Matthew Stafford winning the MVP because one voted for Herbert, two voted for Josh Allen? And also, do you think that Matthew Stafford deserved to win the MVP? We'll take your phone calls on that. You know, look, I can make the argument for 10 players every single year if we're going to do this. If we're going to use the argument that Sam Monson made for Herbert and say, well, 2/5 of his offensive line was out for most of the year. It was a miracle that he put up the numbers he did. How about Baker Mayfield? How about Baker Mayfield playing half the season without both of his top two wide receivers? And Baker putting up basically identical numbers to Herbert, taking far fewer sacks, throwing for the same amount of touchdowns, throwing for fewer interceptions, basically having an identical QB rating and passer rating. Well, why not Baker Mayfield for MVP then, huh? You had to play most of the season without Mike Evans, had to play half the season without Chris Godwin. Oh, it should be Baker Mayfield. Oh, well, wait a minute. What about Caleb Williams? You know, Caleb Williams doing everything for the Chicago Bears, all the fourth quarter comebacks, everything that he did. The Bears are nowhere without Caleb Williams. Oh, you know, he's the MVP. Oh, what about Dak Prescott? Dak Prescott with a terrible defense puts up these. It's a miracle the Cowboys won as many. Like, you see where we can do that for every single quarterback?
Everybody.
You can do it for everybody. Any excuse that you can make is there injuries or deficiencies around them. If they put up halfway decent numbers and, you know, their team makes the playoffs, oh, they're the MVP. Enough. We need to stop doing this. What it really needs to be, 99 times out of 100, it's the guy that put up the best numbers for one of the best teams in football. And yeah, you know what? Is it a quarterback? Has it turned into a quarterback award? It has. And should there have been consideration for Jackson Smith and Jigba for the MVP and Puka Nacua for the MVP? Yeah, there probably should have been some consideration. But, well, you know, and Christian McCaffrey as well. But I don't know I don't know when's the next time we'll see a non-quarterback win the MVP. We haven't seen a running back win it since AP 13 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So Stafford, he put up more than 300 more passing yards than Drake May, 15 more touchdowns, you know, slightly worse passer rating and QB rating. But, you know, again, the numbers speak for themselves. And the Rams, they get to the playoffs. Like, we watched Stafford all year dominate defenses and just put up big-time numbers after big-time numbers. Again, I could see the argument for Drake May as somebody that didn't put up as good of numbers from Stafford, but the team wins 14 games. He's clearly the most important offensive piece. But for me, it was always Stafford because the numbers speak for themselves. End of discussion. And that's how we need to view the MVP award. Whether that's fair or not, that should be the basis. Because then if you get into, well, you know, here's the excuse for why this guy didn't put up 4,500 yards or 40 touchdowns, but, you know, he was so much more valuable because enough. Do you agree with me? It should almost always be best player, best stats, one of the best teams.
That's it. That should be the rubric that every voter follows. Period. End of story. And just to add a little bit more spice to this, and you know, I like to take stuff from a fantasy football perspective, and of course, the numbers do have value here. It's you know, a statistically driven award. You look at fantasy points, and they cover what is called a fantasy war, wins above replacement. Again, a popular stat that I occasionally reference here when it comes to the NBA, occasionally reference when it comes to Major League Baseball, and it's usually used in a lot of MVP discussions in the MLB. And they also have the war stat, though from a fantasy twist there that fantasy points tracks. Do you want to guess, Pat, where Justin Herbert ranked just among quarterbacks this season? I'll give you one guess what his actual ranking was among the quarterback class. What was it?
Among the quarterback class, I will say Herbert was, let's say, 12.
Oh, you were close. Slightly under QB 9. 9. And Sam Monson believed he was worthy of a vote for the actual MVP award. I mean, he was behind guys that you already mentioned, Dak Prescott. You didn't mention Trevor Lawrence. He could have been in that conversation. You could easily make an argument for him based on some of the baseless foundations that some individuals had. Patrick Mahomes was even higher than him, and he took a major step back. Jalen Hurts was higher than him, and he also took a step back in his overall accuracy. It is, again, mind-blowing, idiotic, downright inexcusable that a guy like Justin Herbert was even a thought, a fleeting thought, let alone get a vote for MVP. This was always a two-horse race, as I said, between Stafford and May. And you could easily make an argument for May because Stafford had more weaponry, on roster with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua than Drake May did. His WR1 was Stephon Diggs, who is not nearly the player that he once was. I think he did more with a more depreciated level of weapons than Matthew Stafford did. Of course, May takes the cake in terms of his ground production. But outside of, that hair split, I think Stafford was all the world deserving for this award. Justin Herbert, quarterback 9 in fantasy war, absolutely silly.